Now 12:01 p.m. Today is Wednesday, February 18th, 2015. It's the regular meeting, monthly meeting of the Public Safety Committee. I'm Paul Honeman, the chair, and if my members of the assembly just identify themselves. By the way, we're on record, so whatever you say will be recorded on record.
Ellen Free Jackson.
Dick Traney. Tim Steele.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Steele. And then I guess we'll just go around the table. We do have representatives from the departments. Chief Mew isn't here yet, but we'll go ahead.
Melinda Freeman, I'm the director of the Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
John Fullwater, I'm the fire chief.
Rob Fitch, Office of Emergency Management.
Okay. And just in case you might have something to say, we will have on the agenda an option for people to discuss. So I'll go ahead and have you just identify yourself. My legislative aide.
Yes, I'm Chair Beasley. I'm legislative aide for Mr. Holman and Mr. Training and Mr. Steele and Ms. Jackson.
There you go.
Laura Brett, so the plan administrator for the retiree medical funding program for police officers and firefighters.
Okay.
Jamie Hines from the Clerk's Office.
Al Millsap, Vice President of the University Area Community Council.
Bill Colburn, I'm the taxi owner.
Jackie Slater, KTVA.
Fantastic.
Bob Ransom, taxi owner.
Fantastic. And we do have a recording as well. You're not only being audio recorded, but you may see your picture on the News Tonight channel. Okay, so Chief Mew is not here. We do have a few questions to ask of him, particularly the task force, the current academy status and things of that nature. So we'll hook him up at the end there. And Chief Fullenwetter, Fire Department.
I see the agenda here, so ASP is the health department issue, but I think, talk about the number of runs, and I was told, I'm not sure this number is accurate because I haven't had a chance to back it up, but we did 26,000 runs since we started the dispatching. I don't know if that's 13 or that. Is that correct? Can you tell me?
That 26,000 sounds correct.
That sounds correct.
Okay.
So, and of course, we are dispatching those runs out of AFD, and it has, I believe, created a more efficient system, not only for us, but for ASP as well. You talked a little bit about inebriate issues, and I wrote a letter to Chairman Training, and I brought a copy of this. I don't know if you want me to distribute that or not. Or
Why don't you?
Okay. Here's the concept. Pretty well lays out, at least from the fire department perspective, as to what it would do if we were to reduce the inebriant population. I think the bottom line is that what it would really do for us, I think, is it would salvage the emotional impact to our paramedics, for lack of better terminology. It would allow us to focus our resources on calls of higher acuity. Would it actually save us money? I don't see how, because it takes X amount of paramedics to man X amount of paramedic units, and they're distributed throughout the city to provide care in a certain amount of time. And so could we say that we get all of the inebriates off the streets and it's going to create a huge savings to us? The answer to that is no. You still have to have those people on the street to do what we have to do, or do what we're supposed to do.
Question. Well, I have just one question, Chief, and I understand that you're still staffing your paramedics at the stations to the same level.
Yes.
My first question would be, and it may seem obvious, if they're not having to go to the typical dispatch of a man down, like you don't know if it's a medical emergency or if they're just extremely intoxicated, would not those units be available if there were an emergency, say someone having a cardiac arrest or a car crash or something that might need those paramedics in another location?
Exactly. They said they would be available for higher acuity calls. That's exactly what I'm speaking to. The other portion of that is that sometimes our medic rigs are tied up, and we get those high acuity calls. And of course, we send an engine company, but we don't have the transport readily available to do that.
And then, I guess the next question is, if there's a transport, there's generally a cost associated with that, right?
Yes, there is.
So if someone is billed,
They are billed and we collect revenue for that.
how often, and I'd be curious to note how often you're able, the AFD, the municipality is able to retrieve or receive funding for those transport calls, the chronic inebriate that, perhaps they don't have the insurance or they don't have the means to collect or to pay. Because what's a common cost now, a general cost on that?
I think that for higher key runs, it's $850 a run, if I'm not mistaken.
We set the cost. We set the cost a while back.
Right, I couldn't remember what it was, I just.
There's 850, I think that's right.
Yeah, you're right.
That was the most recent increase we had, and that was effective, I think, last year.
Yeah.
Before last year.
So I guess in general, what I'd like to know if it's possible to retrieve is how much of the monies, how much of those billings for transport are actually collected upon. If that makes sense.
Yes, it makes very sense, and unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that.
Okay.
I think our collection rate, we changed billing agencies, so it dipped a little bit in 13, and I think came back in 14, but I don't know the actual percentage of that.
Any other questions for me? Okay. We also have questions on, I guess we'll start with Academy. You don't have a current Academy going, or do you?
We will, on March 1st, actually March 2nd, we'll start with 16 young men. We started with 17, and we dropped one through the examination process. So we'll have 16 starting March 2nd. 5 of those are going to be paramedics, firefighter paramedics.
And they'll be at the new training center?
Yes, they will.
Do we reach out to women? Do we have any
Absolutely.
women applying? Are they making it through
We
the
have
screening process?
Yes, we have 2 female recruits starting the academy.
Okay, because you said earlier men, so you use a generic term.
Maybe I should say firefighters. Also.
Okay.
That works.
All right.
Okay.
Very good. And then, I guess the ever important first quarter budget revisions, do you anticipate your overtime looking okay? Or are you looking at needing some funding for equipment or personnel?
I think our overtime is going to be just fine. I don't. We're putting it together right now, and I don't foresee any need for additional equipment. As you might recall, we have 3 engine companies and 2 medic units and some medic equipment on our bond issue coming up. Given that passes, we'll be in fine shape.
A couple of years ago, we did have an issue towards the end of the year on overtime, and it was a pretty substantial amount.
$750,000, I think.
Yeah. So if you can monitor that and let us know, I mean, certainly we can hopefully find the funding to adjust anytime we need to, but it was kind of a surprise at the last minute when we were being told by the fire CFO and fire chief that, oops, we need a substantial amount.
Well, I think it had something to do with the CFO.
Yeah.
In a way, because he was trying to tell them to understand this was coming.
Yeah, we will have a budget shortfall this year. How much is still being figured out by the accountants, but it's going to be in the neighborhood of around $400,000, and we'll be coming to you for those funds, of course.
That first quarter?
Well, I'm not sure it'll be first quarter. It should be before that.
Okay, Ms. Gray Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you talking about 2014?
Yes,
right?
2014.
Yes, thank you.
2015 is in great shape as far as I'm concerned. As you know, the mayor gave us 10 additional people that they will actually put this. By attrition, those 10 will go away as people retire. The PCNs we get for those people will take their place. So it will keep us even in our 350 personnel mark. That should reduce our overtime. And actually, when it's all said and done, it won't save any money, but it won't cost us any money at the same time. So that's what I'm trying to say is those extra 10 positions will be netted out of our overtime costs. So it'll be
They'll fill the blank
net zero net, I guess.
They'll fill the blank seats.
Yes, Exactly.
As one retires, you just move one of those into there, so there'll be a net loss on.
Exactly. So that maintains our manpower, so we don't go through this cycle of up and down and up and down. Given that, we are going to have to run an academy once a year, but like I said, it's going to work for us. I know
It's
it
better
is.
planning, chief, I think, than the down-up cycle we've seen before.
Absolutely. Hiring 25 or 30 guys, girls, firefighters, excuse me, and then waiting for the attrition to go down to where we need to hire them again. It just doesn't make sense, and it's not cost effective.
Interesting.
Are the individuals, after they get out of the academy, are they integrated onto the apparatuses immediately? I mean, as soon as they report to their assignment?
There's a probationary period that they must go through. Yes, they're integrated on the apparatus, and they're counted as part of our manpower.
But there still is a period of time.
Oh,
before
absolutely.
they're-
It's, again, I haven't been that close to it, but I'm thinking it's 12 months, and maybe as much as 18, depends on what the situation is.
Chief, anything else we should know about? Exciting, new, great, wonderful?
This is really the wrong day to have this meeting, because yes, we're gonna have some exciting news. We haven't got official notification yet, so I can't disclose it, but next month when we have this, I think I'll have some good things to say that will impact the entire city.
Okay. Mr. Train?
Have we planned for the problem with marijuana becoming legal if people are trying to make hashish oil? We've seen a problem down in Denver. They have records say 32 homes blew up. Do we have a team put together with APD, with AFT, that this nonsense happens? You've got a team that can figure out why and who?
Traditionally, we are capable of responding to these kinds of incidents. Before the hash oil, I guess you want to call it, we had meth labs. So it's basically, it's not the same thing, but it's the same result. So not only is AFD involved, but ATF is involved, APD is involved, health department's involved. Sometimes it depends on how big it is. We can have the EOC involved. Yes, we have an excellent hazmat team that is very much capable of handling any kind of circumstance.
Thanks, Chief.
Well, I look forward to hearing the news, and I'd like to think that the Assembly helped fund and make sure you're adequately staffed as well. So we're glad the mayor's agreed with us and helped staff up the extra 10. Okay, Health Department, Director Freeman, and if you wanted to maybe dovetail in on the CSP, ASP, I'm okay with that too. I understand there's a component that you guys work the contract,
Yes.
but they functionally, who oversees like the day-to-day, the operations of the Sleep Off Center? Like who drops in the middle of the night on the weekend?
Well, that would be our contract manager, Mark Lassard, who's been overseeing this particular contract for almost 2 decades. He's extremely well-versed in every aspect of the safety patrol and the safety center. He's also our manager of our emergency preparedness, which dovetails well with the safety patrol and the safety center. So Mark is an excellent resource for any of us if we need information or updates. We have regular meetings with AFD, and the vendor who provides that services, as a reminder, is Gold Belt. This is their first year with us. This is their security arm, Gold Belt Security, which has multi-million-dollar contract with the military. So all of their staff are trained EMTs at this point, and they hired about 90% or more of the current staff that were working at the safety center. So they were very skilled. Some folks had worked there for over 10 years, so they're still employed working for Gold Belt now. So as Chief Fullenwider said regarding chronic inebriates, and especially homeless chronic inebriates, what we've seen in other states and other cities is that when we do interventions that are effective, such as Housing First, et cetera, we find that we don't actually reduce staffing with the police department or the fire department, but those soft costs are able to be utilized for greater capacity, whether it's APD responding to calls that are different than just simply man down. So I would like to defer to Chief Mew if you want to segue over to him if his time is
If you want to wait, we can come back to you. I know it looks like you're running pretty.
Whatever she said.
Are you in a horrible time crunch? Do you want to do your report and then go back to me? It's whatever works.
I've got about 45 minutes.
Let's go to the chief right
Okay.
away.
So-
His phone could ring and he's
Okay.
out of here.
I'm
So-
sorry I'm late.
No worries,
I've been
Chief.
dealing with the media all day long about marijuana, and I gotta go back and listen to SB 30, which is the testimony on marijuana later today down in Juneau.
Well, you can maybe give us a snippet of what that goes to at the conclusion. So we'll just go to you, Chief, on the agenda then, if you don't mind. We were talking about ASP, the number of runs we've determined is about 26,000 since the dispatching has gone through ASD. And she was just explaining that the Gold Belt being their first year at ASP has been doing fairly well. And I guess the question is, we on the Assembly had funded an extra van, and we think that was the smart move. And we'd like to see if that is, if we need more, are we enough, or is there a gap still that we should be looking at? And
I can tell you from the police department side, and I wish I'd thought of this before I came down here, because I could give you a slide that would really show you, to tell you a good tale from the police department standpoint. Between the expansion of the contract and the fact that you guys, the fire department, is kind of dealing the calls out and dispatching for them, it's really lowered our workload. I mean, you look at, I'll bet you we're half of the drug transports that we used to do. And we're going on 2 years now. I mean, it just tanked. So I assume that, and I don't know for sure, but maybe Melinda can fill us in, that the Delta is being picked up by ASP. It's not that the fire department has picked up those. I don't know, John, if your drug transports have gone up or not. But ours are way, way down. That doesn't mean there are fewer drunks, I don't think, being picked up, but I think it's freed up police and fire, and it's being handled by the expanded contract over here. And that is, I think, as Melinda was saying, we didn't then lay off a bunch of officers to make up for that. So there's still a cost, and the cost to that contract is a cost. But what it does is allows us to focus on more on things that are maybe require officers time and energy and skill that are maybe underutilized when we're just transporting intoxicated people to shelters.
perfect. We had on the agenda the task force updates. I know it's fairly new, but is there anything that you could share with us about the task force, violent crime stuff?
Well, they've been quite active. I'm trying to remember the numbers. I think we seized 37 weapons. And this is this data was good as of last Friday, I think. 37 weapons. Gosh, I'm drawing a blank on how many arrests, but I told this to the media once already, so it's been reported. So I'm hesitant to give you a bad number and contradict myself. But I'm forgetting the number of arrests, but we brought in a whole bunch of witnesses on 2 of the homicides. We ended up developing the suspects in the homicides, and the task force went and got those folks. So a lot of what they were doing was supporting the 2 investigations working on a homicide. So we pretty much got that one wrapped up. You can credit the task force with that. I mean, the detectives were coming up with what the leads were going to be and who they needed to talk to about what, and then the task force would get them, find them, bring them back, and detectives would work on them. And so it allowed detectives to do the interview and strategic work in the office, and the rounding up got done in the task force. So that pretty much wrapped up those 2 homicides. There's a little bit of work left on them, but it's mostly housekeeping at this point. They've now turned their attention on making progress on the double homicide, which is the only one outstanding right now. So we think that they're producing. It's a little too early to look at the numbers and see if we've done anything yet about suppressing gunfire or assaults. You know, obviously, we did have another homicide, and that's not good, but we don't know yet if just all the shooting activity has been affected.
Okay. How many agencies are helping and how many people are assigned? If you have that, something you share?
Well, when we had our first organizational meeting, I'd say there's about 45 people showed up to participate. Probably, 20 of those people were ours. So, that's another 25 or so that were from other agencies. But I can't tell you that that's one for one, because there might be one person from the agency, but they might have 10 people in the office that could help us. So, so the number of people comes and goes depending on their work schedules and how much business we got on any given night. It's not like they gave us, each agency gave us a fixed number of FTEs and we use all their time for this task force all the time. We communicate on a daily basis, lay out what we got going tonight, and the different agencies contribute as the need is there and according to their own staffing and expertise. So we've got federal probation, state probation, FBI, U.S. Marshals, DEA, Homeland Security investigations, of course the DA, the U.S. Attorney, they're involved. I'm sure I'm forgetting some people, but ATF, yes, definitely ATF.
Is the military helping at all?
I don't recall that we have a military component.
Didn't know if I know sometimes we'll see younger persons that are after hours in the middle of the night and the weekend. Sometimes they are.
And I gotta say, troopers are contributing a great deal as well. There's some angles to this that go beyond our jurisdiction, and so they've been quite helpful. And I failed to mention the Fusion Center, doing all the intel work and crunching that kind of data.
Very good. Mr. Stipp.
Yeah, is the Citizens Academy folks, do they help at all, either the FBI folks or your Citizens Academy folks in terms of paperwork and some of the issues when you staff up for the task force?
We haven't used them on this. We used them quite a bit, as you know, on drunk driving stuff. We've used them in the past for other sorts of administrative tasks, but we have not rolled them into this effort yet.
Chief, we know we have an academy going right now. How's that looking so far? Have we lost anybody? We're able to retain everybody so far at this point?
Well, the academy's going along fine. Trying to remember if anybody left us during the academy. We've run so many academies now that.
Too many? Let's cut that.
No, I know. I'm not recalling anybody that's dropped out of the academy
At this point.
Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe I'm not recalling that that's happening.
How many are there right now? 20?
We have between the two academies. Between the two, we have 41 recruits. Roughly half of them are in field training. Roughly half of them are in the academy. The ones in field training are starting to cut loose. One's already cut loose. We expect all of them to be done within the next 2 weeks. So you can take roughly half that 20 or so should be on the street working on their own here by the end of the month.
And
we have another one planned for May and another one late in the year, late October, early November.
Any problem getting recruits?
Well, we have not filled up any of the academies since I've been here.
Okay.
So we came close once. We had, in fact, I think we put out 30 job offers, but in the end we only got 27 acceptances, so we were one shy on that one. The rest of them seem to be running mostly around 24, 22, 23, right around in there. 28 is the perfect number. As you know, one of the academies was something like 16 or 17, but But it's not just us. I mean, the troopers, I think, had 8 in their academy
Hmm.
at one point about a year ago. So it's difficult to fill them up.
So if the stations are here and they're doing videotaping, we need more people for APD?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Since we've got them here, might as well use them.
Yep, might as well use them.
Chief, how about?
We're hiring, and I don't see us slowing down anytime soon.
What's the pace of people leaving versus bringing people in? Are you growing, or are you seeing a lot of folks retire and or move on for any particular reason?
Well, the rule of thumb is we lose 20 people a year. So what you can keep in your mind is if you have one academy a year, you just
Keep it up.
keep it up. Because you'll have your academy, not everybody's gonna make it all the way through. So one academy a year pretty much offsets your average year's worth of attrition. And you just hold the ground. If you have less than one academy, like 0, you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose fast. If you wanna grow, you need at least 2 academies a year. So we've been doing 2 academies a year now for a couple of years. We are growing. We are ahead of attrition. But it's a long haul because it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You could hire 40 this year, but 20 are going to retire. And so, it's a long haul. So that's the hypothetical, that's the rule of thumb. Now that rule of thumb is going to be affected by 2 variables. Variable 1 is how good is your recruiting, did you get those academies full? And 2 is are you having an anomaly year in terms of your actual attrition? It's normally 20, but a couple of years ago it was 38 because we had a
Retirement incentive.
one-time retirement issue thing that took people out the door. So we just had another projection for attrition. It arrived in my mailbox last night for 2015. I confess I hadn't had a chance to open it yet, so I'm not sure what it says, but we're having Cliff crunch those numbers and make his best prediction. So we are trying to use our crystal ball where we can and try and judge what the trends are.
Seems to me last time I was here, we were talking about attrition and training, and you were saying by the end of this year, we ought to be up to FTE.
By the end of 2015?
Actually, I think we were talking about 2015. Are you going to make it up to full FTE, do you think, this year? 15?
I can't say for certain what's going to happen in the future, but on paper right now, we are, didn't look at the numbers before we came here, but we're probably within 5 or 6 of being up to full on paper. Now, most of those people aren't providing any service to the citizens yet because they're in the academies. So on paper, we're looking pretty good. We're lagging because they're still in training. So I think we're getting close.
Mr. Train?
And a lot of it will depend on whether or not we have a little attrition, an average attrition, or a lot of attrition.
Chief, can you have your people break down the racial makeup of the 41 and sexual breakdown of the 41? I want to know if we're getting the equal amount of men and women and racial across the board. I want to make sure we see Alaska Natives coming into the police force. And that'll give us an idea where we're at on it.
I have those numbers. I don't have them in my head.
I don't need them now, just send it to the assembly, okay?
Okay.
Because we keep getting asked, does the police force reflect the composition of the city of Anchorage? So I want to see how we're doing.
I can tell you in general terms what our history has been, at least for the last 5 years, and probably a lot longer than that, but from the numbers that we've looked at, is I think we do really well in terms of getting people through the process without favoring one category over another. The problem is how many people you get to apply. One of the analysis we did on one academy recently, and I got to check and see if this is holding true for successive academies, but at one point I could tell you that the difference, the spread between the category of, there was only 1 point 5% difference in the success rate between the best performing ethnic or racial group and the least performing ethnic or racial group. So all of them came in within 1.5%. And whites were not the highest. So that was fairly tight, and that made us feel pretty good. And we looked at the spreadsheet of every single test along the way and looked and try to see who's dropping out where. And with the exception of there were some differences in gender. The women weren't making it through as well as we would like. But in ethnicity, it was all very tight. We weren't seeing any particular problems with that. So what that told me is if we want more natives or we want more African Americans, we need more of them applying. Because once they get in the system, they're making it through at the same rate.
I just want to know how we're doing getting them to apply, Chief.
We can always do better, and we try hard, and I don't think we're getting the numbers we'd like to have.
Chief, we understand you had a lot of SWAT call-outs here recently, the homicide team coming out with homicides in the first couple of months here. First quarter budget presentation revision. I mean, it's hard to predict, as you say, how you're going to carry out. You may not have another one or another call-out to the end of the year, and maybe you'll be okay. Are you projecting us to need to revise your budget for overtime or for
Well,
budget?
we're in the middle of the first quarter exercise right now. Our deadline is to have our information to OMB on Friday, I think. So we're crunching numbers right now. In fact, OMB, I think, is at the department as we speak, helping us go through some of the numbers. I don't know yet for what we're going to ask for, although I'm preparing lists and I got some idea of where we're going. One of the things OMB came down to look at is the number of major call-outs we've had, which aren't really discretionary overtime. If you have 2-3 SWAT call-outs and you have a couple, 2-3 big homicide investigations that are really soaking up overtime, it's not something that we're going to spend overtime. It's not that we decided, we're going to give too many people time off, or we're going to authorize people to come in and work extra just because, we think we'd like to have more people working. So it's not really discretionary, and OMB is taking a look right now to see if they think our budget can withstand much more of this or not. So that analysis is going on today.
Anything else? Oh,
We've got a list of stuff that we talked to OMB about last fall. We're probably going to offer some of those same things again. You've seen some of them. Some of them you probably haven't seen yet, but we'll be submitting those through channels. And the other thing we'll be doing is we are, after the Colorado trip, we learned a few other things we ought to be thinking about doing in order to implement the marijuana laws. And so I'm still waiting for one more cost figure today, but I'm trying to put together everything we think it's going to take to fund the rollout of the new marijuana initiative.
and I guess
That's something that didn't go into
No
our,
names?
budget planning at all.
So just briefly, Chief, if you could summarize, I know that we've got Monday, we're going to continue the public hearing and information on the oils, edible, cooking in the homes and such. Does the administration have a position?
Extraction.
Butane extraction for liquids. I know you likely have been working in concert with the prosecutor, the municipal attorney's office. Is there a position that the department has or the administration has that you know of? Can you speak?
We're behind the ordinance. The municipal attorney wrote that ordinance because that's what the administration thinks we need. So we're in favor of the ordinance. Whether there's tweaks needed to it, I'm not sure where that discussion is going to go on Monday, but we are already aware of shipments to Anchorage of the necessary equipment to
cook,
to refine and prepare these extracts, and we're responding to that information, as you might suspect we are, but we know that there is a lot of interest in that, and we're worried about the explosion fires.
Mr. Train?
Just, it's a sound document, I've looked at it. If we have to make some changes because of circumstances, we can always go back and revise it. But Dennis Winter's written a good document, I hope to approve it on Monday.
SB 30 is one of the legislature's current efforts to try and define what the state laws are going to be in this regard. And the ink's not dry on that, and there could be a lot more changes. In fact, that's one of the things I want to get back to, because there's going to be a hearing on it here in an hour. But I think they're treating the butane hash oil situation in essentially the same way that the ordinance here is doing. There could be some small differences between the two, but I think philosophically they're in the same place.
We can respond a lot faster, the state legislature can, just the way their mechanism of government works. You gotta get the House, you gotta get the Senate, then you gotta get past the governor. And then maybe it'll take effect come summertime. So I think we respond a little faster.
Yeah, I don't want it until summertime. I prefer to have something ready to go here.
Our goal is to have it by Monday night for you, Chief.
The key thing in my mind is to try to coordinate with them as much as we can so that they know what we're doing and we know what they're doing. I'm sure we're doing that.
I've got a marijuana task force, Ernie Hall's the chairman. We're working with the state legislature on this. So,
Thank you, Mr. Steele, appreciate it. So Chief, I don't know if you can share or any of the information, but the gentleman with the large truck with the gun that was a pursuit that was tried to be, is there any information you can share? I know it's probably still ongoing, but it was the latest officer involved with in Fairview area, the large truck.
I know all about it. What do you want me to say?
Well, I mean, I think the community needs to know that, that there's a lot of restraint used by officers of our department, and a lot of the training that has gone on in the last couple of years as a result of shooting at vehicles or shooting into vehicles or shooting at people that are driving the vehicles. And this particular this incident, the guy, I mean, there were no police chasing. They discontinued a pursuit early on because of the hazards of the community. But this guy was literally looking for a confrontation. At least that's what it sounded like to me. So
I guess I can say this much. Well, first of all, let me preface it by saying, as everybody probably knows, we do a criminal investigation, if you will. I mean, an investigation to see if any of our people broke the state statute. And that is conducted, overseen by Office of Special Prosecutions and Appeals, OSPA. I believe I know where OSPA is probably going by this point, but they got to do their thing, and at some point they will issue an opinion, and it will be public, and everyone will know about it. And in that opinion, they lay out their rationale. Then we do an internal investigation of our own people through IA. So those two things are in the works, and I can't get out in front of those. Those investigations are being conducted by investigators, and they need to run their course. And I can't get out in front of that. The public deserves to get a fair investigation that's not, that people don't think I'm trying to influence it by getting on the TV cameras in advance of those processes running the course. So I got to be careful about that. Okay, all that being said, I think it's fair enough to say that we first got onto this fellow because of the reports of his outrageous driving, and that ended in one of those situations where we had somebody pinned in a snowbank. We approached the car on foot. The driver produced a gun, pointed it at the officers, and they backed up, sought cover. He sped away. So we had a decision point. Do we chase him some more or let him go? Those are the kind of dilemmas that the street supervisor faces every day. And the supervisor's initial decision, and I don't think we quarrel with it, is let him go for now, and we'll re-engage him later. The thought process being, and this is 9 times out of 10, this is what happens. If we're right on somebody's and they're running and they're getting more dangerous by the second, if we're on them, we can help push them into becoming so dangerous that they kill somebody right away. And if we back off, They go about another mile, dump the car, bail out, run, hide. The danger to the public subsides greatly, and then we do something, get a dog or whatever, start coming in slow, doing other things, start working intel, and catch up with this fellow, process the vehicle, interview witnesses, and we get them later, but in a more controlled way. So that's usually what happens. In this case, it didn't work. The sergeant said, back off, let him go to ground. Didn't go to ground. He kept it up. He's driving all over town, crashing into people. Wasn't long before we figured out that didn't work. Left to his own devices, he wasn't going to scale back on his aggressiveness. So, we do what we always do. If plan A doesn't work, we go to plan B. So we re-engaged and decided that he was too dangerous and he had to be stopped by any means. And the rest I'll leave for HOSPA and Internal Affairs to explain in good time.
It's a tough job, and as it summed up, Beth said, it wasn't me, but I kind of believe it. It's one of those jobs where you train professional people to use force against a citizen of our community, and then once they do, if they have to, and then once they do, then automatically they're a suspect in an investigation, and they're investigated for the actions, the very actions you've asked or trained them and tasked them to do sometimes. And it's a tough role, and it's very, but well, first of all, early on when I, as you know, pursued policy was something that was very confusing to me, based on some court rulings and some liabilities. But you do what you have to do to mitigate liability, and at the same time, and a risk. And at the same time, at some point, you have to step in and take action. And sometimes that results in violence, and in this case, it did. But I was glad that our officers were safe and the community was safer as a result of it. Sad that someone had to die, but at the same time,
I think this will be a very interesting story once we're at the place where we can lay out everything we know. I think that you and the public will be interested in what happens and how it transpires.
Okay. Anything else, Chief?
That's enough, isn't it?
I think so. I would ask that last night we had a conversation, we were talking, and Chief has a fairly good explanation. If we could get, by next meeting, I think, I'd like to get an update on how, when we just authorized expenditures to purchase some more cars, and then there's that charge that Fleet Services charges through under an IGC or whatever, and if you could just give us roughly what that is and how much per, because I know there's a cost per unit, and then you were trying to give me an explanation, and I think I get it, but I think it'd be very helpful for people to understand. Sometimes you go to bond and you purchase large items like fire trucks and stuff, and sometimes we have this fund that is coming through the Public Works, through Fleet Services. So perhaps maybe you can, Mr. Michael or Mindy or whoever's managing around,
Sure.
and get us that'd be so we can get a little walkthrough on that. That'd be good help. Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I could explain some of it to you right now, but I wouldn't have the numbers, the
Yeah, I think
actual
it might.
dollar amounts. And
It
things.
might be helpful if we could just, that way we kind of get a better picture and explanation. All right, well, we'll move on then back to Melinda. I'm sorry for your interruption, but Chief, if you've got to run, I know, I understand.
Gonna do SB 30, Chief, you better get out of here.
Well, it didn't start till 1:30.
Okay, well, you can stick around for a minute.
Okay,
Maybe we can help.
Perhaps you can add to my report as well. So you had, I can address any questions you may
Yes.
have on the safety patrol as well as the safety center and how that's going, if you have any additional questions about that. You also had on the agenda the food inspection and scoring criteria update. As you may know, the food code ordinances had been the same codes and ordinances that we utilized from 1987 to 2009, and in 2009 they were updated. It took the health department a great deal of time and work to work out the details with our legal department to make sure that any application of those codes was acceptable to the public as well as to the industry standards for food inspections. One glitch in the process was when we were ready to move forward with our code revisions, the current code revisions for 2015 in this case, it did not have a specific application for food scoring. So our manager of our environmental health, Tony Barrett, had been working extensively with our industry partners, the Alaska Hospitality and Retail Association. They have a new name now. Used to be CHAR, now it's AKHAR or something. Anyway, so we worked with our community partners, our restaurant owners, bar owners, et cetera, to come up with the code revisions that make sense to the industry as well as to the national standards for food inspection. So we will be putting forward a final ordinance that addresses the ability to do the scoring and provides DHHS with the authority, the experts, to be able to provide a food scoring application to the restaurants. And it doesn't specify if those are to be published or if the restaurants have to post those or not, but that information will be available to the public. So we've had extensive public comment periods, and we've encouraged our partners in the industry to give us feedback. We had a meeting about 2 months ago with some of the board of directors of the Alaska Hospitality and Retail Association to give us feedback and work out any details that they were not comfortable with. So we worked all those out. We're ready to move forward. And so it is a little behind schedule than what we had hoped to report to you. So we will be moving forward with that amendment. And you'll be seeing that come before the body. I think we just put it into PACE this week. So any questions on the food inspection and scoring criteria?
Just
Have that here next month.
yeah, we'd like to see if we can get it, if it's available to us for next month's Public Safety Committee meeting, we can kind of.
Sure.
I've heard from some in the industry that they're a little concerned about how some things are weighted, particularly about, like, I don't know, I've heard like points. So you get like 1 point if there's like rat droppings on the floor, but you get 5 points if your employee doesn't know how to point you to the right sanitary sheet on the wall or something. It just seemed like it's
slightly different interpretation than that, but yes,
Yeah.
there are specific industry standards that we can't please every person, both at industry-wide and food inspection-wise, so we try to navigate that middle ground where it makes common sense that if it would be a concern to a consumer, then it needs to be concerned for all of us, so we're navigating that. And we've actually changed some of the numerical application to the satisfaction of the restaurant owners. So we agreed that certain things were too difficult in our data system to reconcile, so we decided to just drop those.
Okay. Mr. Steve?
The scoring, you were talking about whether or not it had to be posted or not. If it's, I guess, I don't know what the owners think, the restaurants, but it seems to me to be useful to the public. They really do have to be posted.
Posted on the website.
Okay.
On the DHHS website. And restaurant owners are incredibly cooperative and been very active partners in this process. I don't think you can do any public process like this without involving the people that will be impacted the most, the consumer as well as the restaurant owners, because people are extremely cooperative in restaurant owners.
Issue gold, silver, or bronze.
Platinum, gold.
Yeah, little things that they can put
It's
up.
a little more pedestrian and it's just scores, but those will be available on the website, and we typically have done that. Any other questions on that? You wanted me to report, and I'll just bear with me if you want to ask questions. I'm not sure what you want me to report related to homeless coordinator and chronic inebriates. I have a great deal of information
Well,
on our efforts.
I want to narrow down then, because I know this could go for, we could have an all-day meeting. on it.
Right.
So I know Ms. Ray Jackson may have questions, so I'll start with her. But basically, we wanted to make sure we wanted to find what the position of the administration in your department is on that. I believe Ms. Ray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, but I have to leave in 10 minutes. So, could you start with the homeless coordinator?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anything new to report regarding the homeless coordinator position. As we've talked about before, between my experience in Alaska and then our division manager, Steve Ashman, who oversees the folks that oversee the safety center, our Alaska Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Intervention Program, and other capital projects that assist people, what we call vulnerable populations. So we address the chronic inebriate problem in about 3 different ways. One is with capital funding for affordable housing, for projects such as Carluck Manor, projects like Safe Harbor. These are all projects and local rental units that serve specific populations. So we fund through federal funding, pass-through money, we fund those projects. We also oversee and are extremely actively involved in the Safety Patrol and Safety Center. In addition to that, we are in charge, if you will, of the Anchorage Community Plan to Prevent and End Homelessness, the 5-year plan for our community to move forward on these efforts. We've been very active with AFD and APD on interventions that we have been developing and working with all of our key stakeholders within the municipality and outside the municipality to address this ongoing challenge of chronic inebriates. We don't have a formal homeless coordinator position. If we did, it could be easily housed in the health department, and we would be very eager to do that. But I think we have about 20 to 30 years experience in this with the current executive team at the health department. We could always use more. We could always use more effort and more time. So we don't have a homeless coordinator, if you will.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your comments, but I know that you don't have one. Because we've been trying to get Daryl Hess, who used to be the homeless coordinator, as you know, and was housed in the Health and Human Services Department. We're trying to get that replaced before you and now with you. But we're going to have some offline conversation about that issue and probably bring something forward first quarter.
Okay.
Just a heads up.
That would
Thank
be
you.
great.
You're
Yes.
welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Steele?
Along that line, when we increased the size of the safety patrol and provided another van funding, we were hoping to take some of the pressure off APD and fire department in terms of transporting and safety issues. But they had a problem then of the state op center filling up and turning folks away. Is that still the case, or how are we doing with regards to the sleep op center?
I think we're doing fine with capacity right now. We have had a very mild winter, and so we have not been over capacity. We also work extensively with the whole Fairview Community Council as well as Fairview Business Association on how to address this, ongoing problem. We are very active with the new $4 million grant that has come into Anchorage, the Chronic Inebriate Anti-Recidivism Grant. There were 2 entities that received that funding. One was Rural Cap for Intensive Case Management, and the other one was a group called Choices, which is using a model out of New York City that has been very successful there. So between that and my work with the Assembly Ad Hoc Committee on Alcohol and Substance Abuse, we are putting a great deal of resources to address this problem.
The rumors are, or have been, that I've heard, is that some of that may go away with regards to the state budget, that we may not get that full
The full $4 million.
$4 million, and also some risk to the whatever Carpet Manor is getting with regards to
Right.
state funding.
That, I think the Assemblyman Steele, I think the funding that you're referring to was the state Basic Homeless Assistance Project funding, which is a multi-million-dollar funding both in Anchorage and statewide. And it is my understanding that that has been restored. So in addition to what we currently have, we will have this $4 million that will be applied to this specific problem, taking again the top 50 to 100 users of the safety center and put them into housing. There are 160 people that will be served of the top users of CSP, ASB now. And there are at least at the current time 70 rental assistance vouchers to be able to place these people into safe housing. So we should see a continued reduction in either the pickups or the utilization of the safety center. I'm not sure. We do have the current research that has been provided by UAA's Institute of Circumpolar Health on the cost effectiveness of the Housing First model. So we can also discuss that at some point if you'd like to have that research with the state public safety.
And associated treatment or counseling or treatment or services.
Right, that involved intensive case management.
How long would you need to be able to present something of that magnitude?
I have the preliminary research now in a PowerPoint that they allowed me to utilize before in a public meeting, and I could also send it, distribute it to all of you as well.
How long, if you did a presentation on that, would it take 15, 20 minutes or?
Probably about 15 to 20 minutes. And if you wanted the experts, if you wanted, I can certainly make arrangements for the providers of the research out of UAE to do the presentation. I mean, you could ask them specific questions,
right here during
but
the-
about 20 minutes.
Okay. We'd like to add that maybe to either March or April, whatever's convenient
Okay.
and with the people in there. It'd be
Sure.
good. So I know we got a lot on the agenda, and I know there's a lot of, again, discussion points with that. So Melinda, I want to tell you where I'm coming from, and this is, we know about what we've been hearing on, we made an attempt, Mr. Training, and I can take co-sponsor on that too.
Yes.
With the alcohol tax, with dedicated funds to emergency services, transportation, and housing, and dealing with chronic and e-rich. Originally, it was to also help fund police and fire services in the lagging, if you will, the increased time that they've been involved in trying to also address these issues. And so, of course, that didn't work. We didn't get it from our assembly colleagues to get it passed to be on the ballot. And so the discussion that I've been hearing loud and clear is, what is the department, what is the administration's position on getting the funding that is collected from alcohol tax from the industry statewide? And their estimations are somewhere around $20 million a year. And where is that money spent, right, from the state? And then can we lobby, if you will, for lack of a better term, what position are we willing to take as a department and as policymakers to lobby? Now, I can tell you that several of my colleagues, myself included, are going down and asking for the funding, and this, of course, it just happens to be a real poor year to go down and ask for the money to come back. But it is, no doubt, generally funded through the taxing going into the general fund of the state. So, Mike, I would ask that the department please help us prepare a statement, a position. I feel strongly that this municipality needs more than just pass-through funding from federal and state monies. That we need to have our own funds that we can control and direct, rather than be this participant at the table when the grant passes through, and then we get to kind of have a voice and a see, but we don't really have a say on how it's monitored or how it's spent through. Mr. Train, I'm sorry.
I talked to 8 legislators last week and the governor and lieutenant governor about coming up with a system like they use for the fish tax, where it's collected at, it comes back to that locale, to see if we can do the same thing with alcohol tax, because it's actually $40 million. And we think 50% of it's raised in Anchorage. So I asked the governor and legislators to see about doing the same thing they do with the fish tax, with the alcohol tax. So we've got a dedicated front stream coming back to this town.
Well, it'd be nice
See
to
where
have.
we go with it.
Agreed.
It's a bad time to be asking for money on the Juno.
I get that. I think it would be helpful if we had one voice. We have the Fairview Business Association with AHR, apparently Alaska Char. They're all saying the same thing. And I think if we were all to take the position, a resolution from this assembly, it would be nice to have it through a request through the department administration saying, hey, we support this approach, and here are some plans. One of the other things, the flip side of that is, here are some plans for the funding, should we were able to raise those. And it could be that we use the monies as, if you will, for revenue bonds, to pay back bonds for housing or for services. As you know, and I think we all know, I'll just kind of summarize your last part on the first quarter budget revisions. Literally, the monies that we're seeing from the health department, the majority of that, is it a fair statement, comes through grant monies from both
Yes.
federal and state?
About 68%.
68%.
And then we also bring in over $2 million in revenues from fees and fines.
So first quarter budget revision, as you heard Ms. Ray Jackson, and I'll be certainly one of the co-sponsors, we'd like to see a homeless coordinator to help us with the planning of the funding that we hope will come to us from the state. And if not, I'll be more than brave enough to try to go back at other funding source, perhaps another.
I agree.
I would like to see if we can, because that's one of the critiques we're getting and criticisms is, you guys don't have a plan. We've got tons of plans. We have no one to coordinate through the plans in place. And no disrespect to your years of experience at it, but you have a huge department that you're responsible for. And for my own personal safety, the food inspection is just as important as anything. But we need to address this problem.
When you discuss budget revisions, that's
Yeah.
one of the requests that we have been discussing with the administration, which is one more FTE as a food inspector.
Okay.
And then we have a slight increase in our cemetery budget. But yes, we would be happy to fully utilize a homeless coordinator if that position were in place. And we know that person would be extremely busy. I know I'm spending a great deal of time on this issue, a great deal of time. And it has to do with my passion for it, my
Sure.
expertise, as well as the demands of the community.
Sure.
We really need to establish continued efforts in this way that are effective. And so we're more than happy to keep working on that.
And then lastly, if you don't mind, perhaps even just some information to my colleagues. There's been some conversation nationally about the measles outbreak and people not inoculating their kids, and I know you guys are not necessarily in the business of inoculations, but the public health outreach. If we can find out, is there an outbreak in Alaska or in Anchorage?
There's not an outbreak, and we do immunizations. We have a very robust disease prevention and control program in the health department. So we do hundreds and hundreds of immunizations a year, as well as TB treatment, etc. So we do not have a measles outbreak in Alaska. We've had a few monitorings of at least one child that there was a concern, and that was simply, my understanding was a reaction to the immunization itself, that we do not have a measles outbreak. We've also been doing a great deal of preparation for Ebola, which you had to do in order to be ready in case that should occur in Alaska. And other than a few monitoring of folks that have traveled, we have no suspected cases of Ebola, nor do we, of course, we don't think we will, with the amount of travel it takes to get to Alaska and the excellent screening that's being done at the airport. And so we are good to go on that.
Thank you. Anything else that you can share with us?
No, I think we will be doing a large-scale exercise in the middle of May and working with our partners in that, and we'll be keeping you informed of how that's working.
Thank you very much. Mr. Training, Mr. Steele? Okay, Mr. Fitch, sorry for...
I just came for pizza.
Okay. And don't forget, there's Moose's Tooth Pizza up here, too, by the way. Plenty left.
A couple things. First, I want to praise the Department of Health. They conducted an exercise the other day at the EOC with our local hospitals and also the State Department of Health on patient movement and on beds, space in hospital, how to start tracking them. They did an excellent job. I want to thank them for doing that. We have the initial planning conference all next week for Alaska Shield 16. It'll be a large-scale terrorist-based exercise. I don't think I'll be giving anything away there. Starting in April 1st through the 7th. So we're starting our plans there, working with fire department, police department on that. We have a workshop this Friday, next Friday, at the EOC for our planning department, working on some new formats that we got and going over our new emergency operations plan. So what we're going to be doing throughout the year is we'll be taking sessions like the community service session and the planning session, bringing each one individually, working through our new format, and then we'll bring them all together at the end of the year and have a large-scale exercise. And then our new public information officer, Julie Harvey, is on board, and she is working full-time now. So
Julie Harvey?
Julie Harvey, yeah, came over from the state, and she'll be taking over all our new programs, including CERT and all the programs that we want to push forward. And last but not least, you've probably already seen it, we did get approved with a grant to purchase some more shelter supplies, and we're in the process of purchasing those now, and trailers, so that we can be able to move them wherever we need to.
Mr. Steele?
How are the schools doing with regards to maintenance of their supplies that they've got in their Conex boxes and their generators and all that stuff?
I cannot answer that. The school district is totally separate from us, and we don't.
You don't coordinate with it?
We don't go into their realm at all. But on the other side of that, we are. They are in the process of redoing their emergency operations plan, and we're in contact with their contractor, and we'll be working together in the future. Here, probably April is the time frame that we're going to be doing an exercise with the school district.
We used to use coordination quite a bit, didn't we, Chief? Because I know at one point you were interimly. Did OEM and the school district work more closely on the emergency planning and equipment?
Well, when I was over the district, we did all of our district stuff internally, but we certainly coordinated with OEM on a bunch of drills, and the city's emergency operations plan has references to what the district would do, and we helped write those, or so that the plan, so our plans and the city's plans would go like that. Reference to the emergency supply containers at the high school, so the SROs went through a couple of years ago and did inventories of those things. And,
They check conditions and those things.
yeah.
I know that the city, or that the school district shut down their water supply. They had a water bottling.
Water
plant,
bottling, yeah.
you know.
They did
There-
some things after I left that on their own.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fitch, appreciate that. Anything else? I'm going to jump right into the towing language, and this is just for discussion. You may have seen an email reference, a gentleman who was towed, and it was the argument he was made about, essentially, he wanted to get access to he wanted to get the car out of impound, and the driver that he contacted at the site at the lot basically said, well, you need proof of ownership. And he said, well, it's in my glove box. Can I get in to get it? And he said, no, you need proof of ownership and insurance. And so there was an argument, and apparently he gives, now this is a one-sided conversation, and he gives the patron, the client, the Bill of Rights that was developed, and basically said, you can thank Mr. Trainee for this.
I know.
Now, this is the comment that was being alleged through the person who was impounded.
So this isn't an APD thing, this isn't a training.
Well, I don't know.
Training issue.
It's our ordinance.
Take your.
So in essence,
No, do I have a piece of this?
no, I don't
You have
believe
no
so.
piece of this.
But Melinda may be,
This is just an unhappy company treating a patron very badly.
but Melinda may be, or Mindy may be, because I know that she's been very firm about letting people have access to get medications from the glove box and to get their proof of insurance and things like that. And I think that's actually in the contract, so I know we try to keep it arm's length, but, you know, it's been helpful.
I know we got some, there was something that Ombudsman was working on, I had some recommendation for some changes, but that didn't sound like that issue. It sounded
No,
like that.
that's not yours. So anyway, I just wanted you guys to know that I've got a call into that manager, the office manager of that tow company. She said she was reviewing the call and she was gonna get back with me. I have not heard yet from her. But,
There's always two sides to everything.
I know that, but the issue becomes one of, if that's how their practice is, and our ordinance is allowing that, we may end up having to make some revisions in the future. Remember,
They
we
need
made
to
that.
not be certified by APD to do any of the APD to.
Well, I mean, it's the issue becomes one of, if you remember, we had it built into the ordinance. One of the draft reviews was that we would allow one access at one time at no cost into the lot at any time to get medication or belongings, valuables, or something. And they complained about it because they thought then they'd have to staff it or have call somebody in for it. And it was, and I said, hey, the industry, we heard them and we took that out, but we may end up having to revisit that if this is going to become a practice. Right now, it may just be a one-off, it may just be a one incident. However, the same tow company is also now, there's been a complaint to the ombudsman, different person, same tow company. So there it goes on.
I believe the language is still in there that they can access the car once without a fee.
Let's please review that, because if that's the case, then we need to send that over to the, send that over. Now, one of the suggestions from the office manager was that the tow company is not going to allow a person who's been drinking heavily, may be intoxicated, and that makes sense, but then either tell them that or call the police to make those decisions and not have arguments at the gate.
We could have code enforcement look into it too.
Okay, that'd be a good idea. Anyway, I just want to give you guys that. At this point, I know that Mr. Bretz has been waiting silently, so if you want us to wait a minute, we'll wait till you have. We also have some other folks in the audience here, reference, I'm thinking, taxi issues. And there's some issues that I know that I just got a call from Ms. Ennis from Municipal Attorney's Office just before I got to this meeting, and that she will be here next month on the agenda, reference an update with Uber.
I asked her yesterday to give us an update. That's what she's coming to do.
And so she will do that next month. And I have received, thank you, I've received a couple of emails recently, as you might already have as well. There's been some interesting rulings and also some cases where Uber, I was made aware of one person who belongs to or works at a limousine service. His new employee came on, had used the little app, got a ride from like International and C to downtown, and was billed on his credit card for like $19. And so that was turned over to TI, Transportation Inspector. There was a conversation, and Uber says, oh, well, that was a goof, they'll reimburse it. And the last conversation I had, they hadn't done that yet. So along with the fact that we still have this attempt to try to work out an MOU and this restraining order, I believe, from them to not charge while they're working through the process, Ms. Ennis is going to come back and give us an update as to where we're at with those processes.
How did the guy get charged if they have an agreement not to charge?
Good question. It's an app, right? It's a technology company. It's not a transportation company. So anyway, I don't know how his credit card came in or whatever, but basically they were told that, oh, we're going to reverse the charges. Whether that happened or not, I don't know. But he did send a copy of the receipt and showed it to me. So I do know that there's still concerns about that, and we'll wait to see what as we go forward.
I know that Uber has a case in front of Workman's Comp.
In Alaska?
Yeah, and Workman's Comp board rules against Uber. They're out of business completely.
I see.
The question is, are they employed or are they contractors? So it's working its way through the Workman's Comp board now.
Okay. Mr. Bretz, I know that we gave you a few minutes. Is there? Wait, hang on just a second. Is there anything you guys like to add? Anything you'd like to say, Ms. Smith?
If I could have just a minute.
Yeah,
I guess.
please.
Sure. Okay.
It's audience participation.
Well, just to give you a little
Just
bit.
for the record, make sure we know who you are.
Okay, my name is Suzanne Smith, and I'm a taxi cab permit owner and operator. Since they have been operating, in addition to what you guys already know about them not having proper commercial insurance and proper chauffeur license operators, and a number of other things, what we are finding is that with our current regulations that we have to follow, we have to have DOT physical past operators behind the wheel. And so oftentimes diabetes has been an issue for several of our drivers, and then they don't get renewed for their DOT physical, which then doesn't permit them to have a chauffeur license to drive taxi cabs. So what has happened in 2 cases that I know of for sure, and I'm sure there's others, I just don't even know who all is driving for Uber at this point, but 2 that I know for sure could not renew their chauffeur license, but yet now are driving for Uber. So again, if it's mandated from DOT to have those things in place, now they're still being in jeopardizing the community and driving commercially in that capacity. The other thing is there is no limitation on the number of hours that Uber is operating, and we've been told by many people that there's people driving 14-hour, 16-hour days. So there is a safety concern, and that's why I was here, just to bring that to your guys' attention as this kind of hones out. And then the marked cars is a problem, and I think one of the articles I did send to you last week was people are getting familiar with flagging down unmarked cars because Uber has become such a nationwide thing. But what is happening is in some cities is people are pretending to be an Uber driver and flagging customers down coming out of bar break, those kinds of things in different capacity, and unfortunately bad things are happening. So I think when you guys talk about this and work through all these things, the marked cars is a safety component, and it is for our industry, it's for our community. So just one more thing to bring up. And then the other thing I want to bring up right now is, December 2013, the Assembly, there was an increase in our fees for permit renewals. It was a 25% increase. That increase was justified so that we would have another enforcement officer in place. It's now February 2015, and we do not have that other enforcement officer. And the resources from that department are being, I don't even know what percentage, but I'd venture to say 60 to 70% of the efforts out of that transportation office right now are being dealt with just by Uber issues. So, I don't know if you guys can help us get somebody in that seat, but I think, 14 months waiting for another person in that seat is a little much. And we paid those fees right when they were asked for those increases, and I would like something to be done for that.
What's not being done because you don't have the other enforcement?
The major problem is nighttime enforcement on the weekends. You've got unlicensed operators all over town. You can sit on Fifth Avenue and watch them come in from the valley, at the airport, bar break roaming. I mean, it doesn't take much. But there's nobody out. And so they know that that's a huge window. It's a very profitable window. So
Mr. Train.
Mr. Evans says he's got an ordinance coming forward in March to deregulate taxi cabs. Are you aware of that?
To deregulate,
Yes, complete deregulation. You know about it's coming.
I do know of it, March 3rd.
Okay, just want to make sure you know about it.
We will have Ms. Ennis here. Of course, that's just one member's introduction of an ordinance. Well, Ms. Ennis will be here next month for the update on, and so I'd encourage perhaps if you would like to attend, give us an idea. If it's going to be a big turnout, we maybe will move into the chambers if we need to. I don't know if there's anybody's interested. I know usually you guys are. But thank you for keeping us posted and updated on issues. And we are, as we're getting these in, as you see, we're directing them and we're working with our municipal legal to work with
Thank you
them.
for giving me this time, even though I wasn't on the agenda.
No, we actually include the audience participation. But thanks, Susan. Anybody else? Anybody else? Any issues? Al?
Al Millsville, Vice President, University of Community Council. Our greatest concern right now is the crime that's been going on, which Chief did touch on that, and the homicide. As a prior APD reserve officer for 10 years, my concern is the officers, because of all the restrictions being put on them, I'm concerned that they may get hurt. So that's just put out there for the word there.
Appreciate it. I know that Folkler Park, we just had a couple of campers there not too far in your area there. Barbara gives us good updates and such. It appears that the lady had a pre-existing condition and was not a homicide. They originally thought we were looking at it as a possibility, but anyway, sad, homeless, living in a tent, makeshift
She's
carrier.
31 years old.
And so the issue for me is that it affects this chronic inebriate homelessness. We can't deny it's not happening. We can't deny that we can't admit that we'll ever solve the problem in its entirety, but we can certainly do better than what we've been doing in this community. And I do agree with you, Al, that we've got to do better with staffing, and we can't just, as the chief was saying earlier, I've got 10 coming, but that's going to kind of keep me flat. At some point in time, we've got to look at, well, we've grown as a city. Do we also need to grow in our service capacity? And I think we've been kind of shorting ourselves. And at some point in time, it's really going to catch us in the behind. And then the liability could be even worse. So, but thank you.
If I could add one more thing too, same applies to animal control. More officers, because they can't do their job effectively either.
Agreed. And I agree. Mr. Train.
We tried, Al. Here's the problem. You've got to convince the representatives from Erie, Chugach, and South Anchorage.
I understand.
Because on the floor of the assembly said, we don't have a problem with dogs in this area. Until we convince them it's a citywide problem, we're not going to have the votes to give animal control to the people they need. It's based on a town of about 150,000. We're twice that size now.
I've been trying.
We've been trying too, Al. But like I
Keep
said,
trying.
I've got those 4 assembly members. We've got to make them understand it's a citywide issue.
Help us to educate them. Thank you, Al. Mr. Brett.
All right, my regrets to my chair, Don Carone, and vice chair, Cleo Hill, regret that they couldn't make it here in person. They wanted to be here, but they have other work obligations that came first, but they'll be present at the work session on this issue on the 26th regarding the internal audit and the mayor's proposed revision of the medical trust. This got started because the board was being responsive to an internal audit recommendation for clarification on the board's position on Titles 3, 4, 6, and 7. And so the board wanted to be responsive to that and clarify the code so that it would be understandable to all that read it at first glance. It's been a long process, but over 6 months, and then we had the proposal that the mayor put forward, and the board does not agree with that solution at all. And they do have a solution, one that they wrote back in June, and they're hoping that the assembly will take a good look at it, review it. I know that on the 26th we don't have very much time to present it, but we're hoping that it'll be adopted into code. It does answer all the things that the internal auditor said needed clarified, and we look forward to having full attendance at that meeting with the assembly.
Mr. Train.
Can you send that letter to us again, make sure we have it? I want to send a copy to internal auditor. Because I don't want, the letter from your board with your solution for it. I will send it to the internal auditor to get his comments on it before our meeting on the 26th, if you would.
I will.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna address this through a kind of a comment. Did you not have an attorney through the trust that's not available in February, but they will be in March?
Correct. Our attorney, Michael Gaddy, is not available on the 26th. He will call in telephonically, though, to the work session, but he cannot be present.
Okay, so it's my intent then, Mr. Chairman, to
Mine just
postpone
went
this.
for us, too.
Right, I'd like to postpone this so that we can have the trust board give their presentation on what the solutions should be. My personal position on this, and it's been declared, but my professional side, I am a member of this medical health trust, and though it's no income per se, it's a reimbursable, and I've declared that before, and there's been no conflict. But my professional side of it is, I think that whatever we do, we need to hear from the trust, because we actually have it in the ordinance, in the language, that the trust board has the final say, absent the assembly dissolving this entire trust. Yes, we have that authority, but I don't think we need to go that far. In fact, I at this point, I'm not been convinced that we need to dissolve this or rearrange this, and that we should just leave it alone and then reapproach the solution at a later date, a future date. I'm not in any hurry to throw another ordinance on the table to try to counter what the administration has. I think we just take an at ease. That's just a perspective. But I haven't, to be fair, I want to hear what the attorney says from the trust. I want to hear from the trust board. If they can't all be together and they can't be, and we're not going to give them adequate time, I really believe that we need to, I believe we should allow that, afford that opportunity.
We'll talk about it after the meeting.
Okay. All right, so that's my position on it, and I appreciate you sharing the information, Mr. Brett, keeping us updated.
You're welcome.
All right, any other audience participation? Anything from the media? No. Anything else? There's still some pizza left. Please take some with you. I believe that should be it, and time now is 1:23 p.m. We'll be adjourned.